a lot of the times what people forget is that I still have high school.
Welcome Marco Hunter-Lopez. He's a student leader, a patriot, and civic activist from WYLIE, Texas.
First, I just want to start off by saying I started, as she said, at 13, working on campaigns with our state representative, been able to build a relationship with precinct chairs, all of our party leadership on the county level and the state level. And it's just been really great to see how the Collin County Republican Party, no matter what faction of the party you are or anything like that, I feel like conservatives are very independent thinkers, which is what's great about us, but sometimes it can hurt us. So that's why I think Charlie Kirk was a big, important part of our movement, because he brought people together. And I think that's something that we're missing right now. And there's a lot of individual Charlie Kirks out there, and I think we just need to continue to pray for leaders in our movement. But I started the Republican Student Club at my high school last year as a freshman, and our club went through so much. On August 16th of 2024, we had all requirements to be a club. We had 10 students, we had a teacher, and we had a room to meet. The school came back and said that our club couldn't meet and couldn't have a club because of political nature, even though they approved the Muslim Student Association, they approved another organization that had gender-affirming ideology in their curriculum. And so we really pointed that out. How is that fair? They can have their group, but we can't. And they came back and said, oh, it's a district policy. You guys can't have a conservative group. And so for weeks and weeks and weeks, we just kept asking them, hey, if that's a district policy, that's fine. We'll go to the district after that. Can you just send us that policy in writing so we know what to reference? Didn't send anything in writing. They actually came back and said, oh, it's not a policy, it's just the way we feel. And so I think that just really speaks volumes as to what the left tries to do to censor voices on the conservative side, especially students, because I think when they see us, they see a threat, because our values are built, as he said, on a Christian heritage. And I think they see that as a threat. And I always, when I go speak to other people are always asking, like, how do I see this? And I said, as a Christian, you don't need to see this as a battle between flesh and blood. It's a battle between principalities and powers of the dark world. This is a spiritual battle. Every single morning when you wake up, you have to know that. We stand for things. We're not just standing against things. And I think that's what I just really, saw in the Republican Party. As a student, I really got interested. It was in one conversation I was with my great-grandmother, and we were driving through Murphy, and I told my grandma, I was like, why did you vote for Trump? I just want to know. And she just gave me all these reasons, and I just went back and just researched and said, this is a really good platform that I believe in, personally. We saw a big cultural shift when we had Charlie Kirk as our big speaker for our movement. So I've seen students walking through the hallways that you would never think wearing freedom shirts, because they really saw that in him, and it's the torch is being carried. It's still going on today. So obviously we went through all that. After we kept pushing and pushing and pushing, they eventually approved our group. But here's the catch. We were the only club that couldn't have guest speakers, the only club that couldn't have a social media page, only club that couldn't have posters. And we just, there was many battles that we just had to keep fighting. And when we eventually got the privilege to have posters, when I was out of town in Florida for my sister's proposal, my friends were texting me that our posters are just disappearing. And I got back, and the principal said that they took them down because they had an issue on how the American flag was on it. And so that's little things that happen. And I have a timeline from last year all the way to today with like 50 to 60 instances of hostility, censorship, and even violated laws. Last year, after, like I said, we kept fighting those many battles, we had the privilege of hosting Chairman Abraham George, and we also hosted Precinct Chair Mike Medea at our club. And the principal was upset because I wanted Terry Wade to come to speak to our group. And she pulled me in her office and with the other assistant principal and was just talking down to me, just saying, hey, that so many, 2 speakers is a lot, to take, keep track of, and all this stuff, while other clubs can have the speakers. And so they had an issue with Terry Wade coming. For some reason, they just, I guess, again, it's a threat to them. Crazy. But when I was, they were talking to me, the principal was saying, we're making new rules on the fly. Today, this is the new rules about speakers. And so that's just, a little glimpse of what we had to go through. We eventually had Emily Rice from Turning Point USA also come and speak to our group. And then this year, we had a meeting with the principal, and last year at the end of the year, we had a meeting with the principal and district administrators. And it was about an hour long, and they assured us nothing like this would ever happen again. You guys are going to have rush week, which is when all the clubs get to set up a table in the cafeteria. You guys are going to be able to have posters. You guys are going to be approved without issue. 1 week before school starts this year, I get an email from my teacher sponsor saying that he can't sponsor anymore. It's a little strange because it was after he spoke to the principal. And so, you know, I built relationships with teachers and students, and so I was privileged to be able to text one of my baseball coaches, hey, do you mind sponsoring our club? He texted me within 5 minutes, I'd love to do it. And we show up to have our table set up on Meet the Teacher night, and the principal, one of the principals comes up to me and said, you guys can't be here. I was like, well, everyone else is here. You guys don't have a sponsor. I was like, oh, I gave her the new sponsor name. And then that wasn't enough for her. She was like, oh, you guys need to take down your campaign signs. I guess she was offended by our city council signs, all the campaigns that we were involved in. And she said the school district said that you guys can't have these, when the school district assured they wouldn't get involved on those minuscule issues. And so that happened this year. We were we went to the school board. There was a lot of people from the Collin County Republican Party that came to speak out about the censorship we were facing. That next morning, the principal, the district had called and said it was all approved, we're good to go again. So we finally got the club, no issues, because they saw the big presence that we had at the school board meeting. They saw how much support the Republican Party gave us, and so we really appreciated that. We can fast forward a little bit. So on February 2nd of this year, there was an organization called WYLIE Islam that went on site of our campus. WYLIE Islam is sponsored by the Muslim Brotherhood, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the Islamic Circle of North America, some of which have been designated as foreign terrorist organizations and terror linked in general by the governor of Texas, by the president, by the governor of Florida. And so this is something that's widely understood. And so I was leaving a club meeting, and I was going inside of lunch. I was going to school, and while I was going to go get my meal, I see a big booth at the front of my school. It says Islam at the front of it. I'm like, what in the world is going on? We have colleges come out, we have military branches come out, but I've never seen that. I've never seen a religious group. We can't even do that. It's against the law now because of bills passed by the legislature this past year because of groups that were coercing students to change their genders without parental approval. So they had to put these new standards in place. And so I didn't want to give it any attention because I was so shocked. And I sat down and I was talking to my friends, and all of us kind of agreed, like, this is not okay. We want to go see what's going on. What's their goal? We went up, and there was 4 adult women there, and I was just discussing with them, about basic theology about Islam. And one of them actually told me, we don't need Jesus. And I said, so your goals are very clear. And they had the Quran there, and on the Quran, on the back of it, it has a Shahada card, which says to accept Muhammad and Allah, and it gives all these steps to do that. And I looked over, and there was about 8 or 9 pamphlets spread out, one of which was titled Understanding Sharia. Now, I'm not an Islamic expert, but if I understand a little bit about Sharia, that's not compatible with anything we believe in America. And so, we were questioning things like that, and they're like, oh, you guys don't understand it. And I was like, there's a thing called taqiyya in Islam, which is they're allowed to use lies to advance the faith. And what I notice a lot of people say is, oh, you can't, the terror attacks or whatever, that's the radical part, right? You can't judge a whole ideology based off one person. That's fine. We don't have to base it. We can compare Jesus and we can compare Muhammad. Muhammad started 84 wars and raids in 11 years. Jesus condemned his disciples when they wanted to tear down a city. Jesus said, protect the children. Muhammad married a 6-year-old. Okay? So there's a clear difference. We can compare the leaders of the faiths because at the end of the day, Christ is king. Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. All right, like I said, again, this is a spiritual battle, and people really need to wake up to that. And Charlie Kirk always said, I'm not here for politics, I'm here for the gospel. He used politics as a vessel. He used it as a bridge, as a gateway to bring people to Christ, bring students to Christ. And after that day, when all that had happened, I was actually late to class. The only time out this whole year I was late to class because I was so concerned. I wanted to read through all this stuff. And that night, I went to the Collin County precinct meeting. I went up to, does anybody here know Kyle K.D. Sims? Yes. So I went up to him and I said, hey, Kyle, I was like, maybe you want to do a post about this because I know he has a large presence in Collin County online. So maybe you want to do a post about it. And he was like, maybe you want to do a video about it. And obviously, since I can't drive yet, my dad was outside waiting. And I had to call called him and said, hey, can I do a video? And I was thinking it was going to get maybe 50, maybe 100 views. And I got home and it was 1 million views. And so it exploded so big. And I watched it at the end of the video and I said, I want this to spread like wildfire. It did. You got to be careful with your words, but I'm glad it did because it needs to. But I know that for the future next time. But that story really resonated with a lot of people. And what I noticed is a lot of people don't want to speak out because they'll be labeled an Islamophobe. They'll be labeled a xenophobe. They'll be labeled, you hate people, all this stuff. I said yesterday in the hearing when I was talking to Congressman Brandon Gill when he was asking me questions. He was asking about specific things. And I said, no one can proclaim anything over me because I wake up every morning with victory in Christ. That's all that matters. His word is final. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. And so, that's happening all the time. And Christians, the church needs to really wake up. Conservatives need to wake up to this threat. Americans in general need to wake up to this threat. Because they're going to say, oh, it's just 1% of the population. Oh, there's only 2 Islamic members of Congress. Next you know, it's going to be Europe. And we don't want that. I saw a video in one of the European countries. And all these people of the Islamic faith were getting upset that there was pubs next to the mosques. I think that's twisted. Why is there mosques next to the pubs? Yeah. So that's the way I see it. And I've always explained it. I have, I have Muslim friends, I have Muslim neighbors. I don't see it on an individual, basis. I see it as an overarching system because the top imams of Islam admit that Islam is not a religion. They say it's a political system. It's a form of government that seeks to destroy the West. I don't remember what show I was on, but they were asking about the blueprint. A 1,400-year blueprint that Islam has been using to destroy the West. And I said that a lot of people hate history class, a lot of people hate history, they don't want to talk about history. I'm like, we don't have to go all the way with that back. We can go to 1991 when the Muslim Brotherhood wrote their memorandum and the Holy Land Foundation. They seek to wage jihad against us. And in the Quran, the group our school gave us talks about waging jihad. And, there's a few waves of Islam. The first wave is they come and they claim Islamophobia. They claim victimhood. The second wave is, hey, do you want to start talking about Sharia law? Maybe this is something you might want to talk about. The third wave, they start implementing it with Sharia courts, which we saw in Collin County with a woman that couldn't get outside of an abusive marriage because the Republican judge, it was actually a Republican judge that referred her to a Sharia court. And so that's the things that we're seeing. And we're seeing with Epic City, Epic and Plano. If you go look at the street signs in Plano right now, they're named after Islamic martyrs. The name of that neighborhood, it's called Medina Villas. Medina is the cave that Muhammad received his proclamation. And so we have to start noticing those little things that they're starting to implement. And we really have to understand what's going on. It's kind of fast forward. So after all this has happened, the Sharia Free America Caucus was formed. Congressman Self, our great congressman, along with Congressman Chip Roy, have formed this caucus, and it's growing weekly, and I'm excited to see. But it's still, I've seen Republican congressmen that still don't see the threat, but they're slowly starting to see it. They hold the first hearing with Mr. Spencer. I don't know if anybody know who he is. He's great. Krista Shields spoke there as well. A few days ago, we got a call saying that they wanted to fly us out to D.C. And a lot of the times what people forget is that I still have high school. And sometimes I still forget that. And I want to forget that. But they called a few nights ago and said, hey, we want to fly you out to Washington. That's not something you hear every day. That was really shocking. But I've been able to be, I don't know if everybody knows Fred Gaffney. Yeah. He's great. He's got a great program. I've been able to be on his show and talk about everything. I've been able to be on Chris Croc's show. I've been able to be on Nick's Right podcast. A lot of different, organizations and, shows and things to get the message out there. Tuesday night, we flew out, and we got there. It was a less than 24-hour trip. We got there. I didn't go to sleep until 4 a.m. because I was just ready, to go testify before Congress. And there was an organization known as IMPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, that were there. And they knew this was the second hearing, so they really had time to prepare on how to agitate and things like that. And so we had got there to the committee room, and I walked into where the congressmen go, and obviously the Capitol, I don't even know how we got there. It's just so many winding halls and all the numbers and everything. we got in behind the Judiciary Committee where all the congressmen and all the staff go, and it was all witnesses there. We're finding, filling out our last paperwork, and Congressman Chipboy walked in, and he had his Starbucks in his hand. He was just like, I just got to confirm he's the first minor to testify. And so that was a big honor to have that honor, to be the youngest person to testify before the Judiciary Committee. She sat down. The Congressman Roy had his opening testimony. Ranking Member Scanlon had her opening testimony, and then Jamie Raskin had his testimony.
You're a brave young man.
Yeah. So he had his opening, and then anybody know Eamon Blair?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes, she's great. So when he spoke, Amy Beck was there, and then I was, also the other conservative witness, and then the Democrats invited their witness. She was, I believe, she was a leader for some Baptist convention, but they were very left-wing convention. She was there just defending Sharia law, plainly as a follower of Christ, which doesn't make sense to me at all. If you run a Christian organization, I don't think the best thing to do is go and promote another faith. They spoke, and then I got to speak. There was questioning. Like I said, Brandon Gill, he asked me some questions. He gave me the time to speak and expand on instances at my school and what has happened. And then Congressman Wesley Hunt, he was great as well. He gave me the time to speak. And Democrats were really using the floor to talk about redistricting and random stuff like that. It had nothing to do with the hearing. And I almost wanted them to ask me about redistricting so I could say, what the heck are you talking about? And then Representative Jayapal, she was also there. And she was, she only questioned the Democrat witness, and she didn't question me. And I really wanted her to, because I had the article pulled up right there where she was helping other spies from other countries. I wanted to use that against her. And then Jamie Raskin came, and he was asking Eamon Blair about, instances or whatever. And then he started talking about secular law and all this stuff. And he was like, I opened it up to the panel, and I wasn't going to say a word, but he called me out. He said my name, and I was like, okay, you want it? I'll give it to you.
That you're allowed to acknowledge your Christian heritage or your Jewish heritage or your Muslim heritage?
I'm saying you members of Congress need to acknowledge American heritage. When the camera's not on you, I try to be on my phone just so I could, because my mom wasn't there, my other family wasn't there, just me and my dad. So I tried to communicate, on the spot. And our whole family group chat was, going off. And my uncle right there, he texted the video and he said, this is about to go viral. And I didn't believe him, but I get on the flight, and this is the first thing I see in my feed. Christian witness dismantles Islam cheerleader Raskin. And these aren't conservative outlets at all. High school student Marco Hunter-Lopez embarrasses Rep. Jamie Raskin during a hearing. So there's just, it blew up. Andrew Colvett, the person who runs the Charlie Kirk show, he sent out a whole thing, and I'm going to read it real quick. Representative Jamie Raskin spent over 2 minutes trying to grill 16-year-old Texas high school student at today's hearing on political Islam. What a clown. Marco, who exposed his school allowing WYLIE Islam to hand out Qurans, hijabs, and shirah pamphlets during lunch, while censoring conservative clubs, simply pointed out America's Christian heritage and the faith of the Declaration signers. Raskin interrupted him repeatedly, demanded to know if he was a theocrat, and lectured him on Jefferson's wall of separation. This is what happens when a 60-year-old patriot stands up to truth in Congress. Marco stood his ground quite well against a man 47 years his senior. Good work.
Did you get a permission slip from Trump to show your
I have the letter from Chairman Jim Jordan that I'm going to use. So.
And Mark, if we could, folks, if you have YouTube or you've never used it, subscribe to his channel.